All right, we're gonna watch every single Warhammer 40k faction re-explained part 2, which is gonna be another part 2 because we already did a part of this. So we're gonna do another chunk of it and learn some factions re-explained.
The orcs are the pinnacle of creation. For them, the great struggle is won. They have evolved a society which knows no stress or angst. Who are we to judge them? We Eldar who have failed, or the humans on the road to ruin in their turn? And why? Because we saw answers to questions that an orc wouldn't even bother to ask. We see a culture that is strong and despise it as crude. During the war in heaven, the old ones were doing their best to spawn as many combatants to their cause as possible by seeding the galaxy in a specialized sense. The Eldar were made to be a precise and tactical species to fight off the Catan.
They're psychics, right?
But another
Eldar is known for like
was made by
being
them as well.
psychs.
The Krork were warriors clad in ornate armor with more dangerous weaponry. However, things changed, and these warriors changed, and the Krork are no more. They are now known as the boys, the lads, the mates, the orcs. An orc in 40k looks like an orc in most other fantasy media. Hulking, warlike monstrosities with big teeth and worse attitudes. However, unlike the more Tolkien-esque forms of these creatures, the devastating nature of the orcs is in their biology. Unlike most species in the galaxy, the orcs are actually a type of fungus. This fungus itself comes in various forms. The small goblin-like Gretchen and Snotlings are a part of this fungal ecosystem as well, and also the squigs, which can be used for basically anything. But regardless of what is a part of the fungal system, all of them are born from spores that land on the ground and grow. As they travel around the galaxy, they drop spores literally everywhere, and then an orc dies, and they drop tons of fungal spores that allows for their numbers to be replenished over a period of time. Because of this,
it's like a bad case of
ringworm prominent across the galaxy, but they are exceptionally resilient due to their growing cycle. Even if one orc lands on a planet, it will be nearly impossible to get rid of all of the orc presence unless the planet itself is completely destroyed. And even then, they might find a way to survive. Due to their fungal nature, orcs don't really stop growing, and the more long-lived an orc is, the bigger they get, and the more an orc fights, the bigger they get. Of course, since they're constantly getting into scraps, an orc's lifespan isn't necessarily that long, so the bigger orcs are harder to find. Though alongside this, however, they are a tribe-based species that is comprised of war bands, and the biggest and the strongest orc leads the war band known as the War Boss. At the bottom end of the orc tribal system are the Gretchens and the Snotlings. These members act as the servants and slaves of the orcs, and sometimes their actual ammunition, despite being a bit smarter and more cunning than their bigger brethren. Because in orc culture, the biggest is the boss. The smallest gets picked on and thrown around. Beyond
the biggest is the
tribes,
boss.
Orcs also belong to a specific clan. Tribes constantly shatter and rebuild, but the clans do not. They are, in a sense, a psychological state of being for any given orc, and gives an orc their specific character and traits. And to make things easier, these clans are also color-coded, so that's very easy to tell what orc does what. Though there are many clans out there, 6 of them are the most prominent and well-known. The Bad Moons are essentially the merchants and have a lot of money because their currency is teeth, and they grow teeth faster than any others. The Blood Axes are the stealth units, and by stealth it means like slightly more quiet than the others, and they have a love for LARPing as humies. Death Skulls are the scavengers, and the Goths are the close combat specialists. And on the two ends of the spectrum, we also have the tech-savvy Evil Sons, and the more traditionalist and tribal Snakebites. Another major facet of orcs is their religious beliefs. They believe in 2 gods, Gork and Mork. Gork is cunningly brutal, and Mork is brutally cunning. The difference between them, according to orcs, is that Mork hits you when you aren't looking, and Gork hits you when you are. There's a lot of confusion as to which one is which, and this results in a lot of infighting. In other species, this would be considered a sort of religious conflict, but for the orcs, it's just another excuse to fight. I have a quote here, but I don't really do a good orc voice, so I'm going to get my co-host of That's Ridiculous to read this one, and I'll try to lip sync it.
Oh, he's more cunning in a grot and more killing in a dread. The boys that follow me can't be beat. On
Actually really
Piscina,
good.
we jumped the Marine boys, and our boss poles was covered in the helmets we took from the dead-ends. We burned their port and killed their bosses and left nothing but ruins behind. I'm Warlord Gezgul Mac Uruk, and I speak with the word of the gods. We's gonna stomp the universe flat and kill anything what fights back. We's gonna do this 'cause we're orcs, and we was made to fight and win.
It's because this fucking sounds terrible. Fighting is the biggest aspect of orc culture, and is essentially their life's purpose. They are genetically hardwired to get into battles and scraps with enemies
I like the pirate
that
hats.
can feel pain. The more they fight, the bigger they get. This, combined with them getting bigger over time, means that some of the biggest and baddest orcs of all time have been notably gigantic. The Beast, as he was known, was about the size of an imperial knight.
He
If
cute.
an orc runs out of other enemies to fight, they will immediately start infighting to scratch the battle itch. For example, in The Warp, a planet exists where a band of orcs are in a constant state of war and battle, and have been for an improbably long amount of time, strictly because how much Khorne enjoys himself watching it. For some, being trapped in a perpetual war planet for all eternity would be a fate worse than death, but to the boys, this is heaven. In the event of a particularly big battle, a massive
I've never
amount
heard of that.
tribes and warbands will unite under what is known as the Wa. The concept of a Wa covers a few bases. The first is the group aspect of the massive green tidal wave of orcs fighting for the same cause, the cause being the second base. But the most prominent aspect of the Wa is the psychic aspect of it. Remember how the old ones made the Eldar and all the Eldar are psychic? Well, the orcs are too, kinda, but just not as much. Only a little bit of it. And they often don't know how to use it, and frankly don't care. But a huge gathering of orcs generates a psychic field that allows orcs to be more organized, dangerous, and dedicated to the war-based cause. However, the true extent of the psychic energy and its usage is relatively unknown, but that doesn't matter considering the outcome 90% of the time. In a similar sense, their ragtag technology and weaponry is also a mystery to most who encounter it, purely because of that Wa energy. The technology the orcs use seem to be held together with duct tape and plastic glue, and crude doesn't even begin to describe it. Their guns seem to have an inordinate amount of ammunition and firepower, and they are seemingly able to put things together on the fly in the middle of combat. The Imperium is of the mind that the orcs' weapons and machinery only work due to their innate psychic ability, but realistically, orc gear hardly works in the first place. Weapons blow up in a Bugs Bunny-esque manner all the time, and their war buggies can collapse in the middle of battle. Just because it works a handful of times does not mean it's an effective weapon. But this doesn't stop the orcs and their green tide. To really understand the power of the Wa energy, orcs can operate purely off of belief. Now, a misconception is that orcs believe something is real and it happens. But that isn't true, because that's just one orc. However, there's never one orc. There's normally a few billion orcs together.
What's that
and if they
giant
all
orc in the
believe
back?
something is
Looks like an
true,
orc
the
titan.
warp will tend to respond with a positive green light. Sometimes. Do the red ones go faster? Well, with enough orcs, yeah. How does an orc buggy with an engine block that's just a boulder with vroom vroom written in chalk work? Who cares? Orcs breathing on a ship with a hull breach? Go ahead. An orc went back in time to kill a version of himself so he could have two of his favorite weapons. It is
Nice.
shenanigans. Because of their actions and aesthetic, the orcs tend to be presented in a comic relief sense in a lot of media, particularly the media from their perspective. They are bumbling and loud and goofy British football hooligans, and they say silly things and act in silly ways. But to the citizens of the
Gargants.
Imperium, the orcs are far from funny. They are violent and irrational creatures that take humans for punching bags, slaves, or ultimately dinner. They have no moral compass and are violent and brutal killers that know nothing else. They are genetically
I did not know that the orcs would take Umi slaves. That is very interesting. I figured they would just kill them or eat them. Do they eat humans? I don't know. What do orcs eat?
Designed to be a violent species that was capable of beating back the Necrons and the Catan. And if the orcs were ever able to unify under one banner, they would be utterly unstoppable. However, due to their aggressive nature, their organizational skills are non-existent, and they tend to just beat each other up for the fun of it. All that exists in the mind of an orc is fighting, and nothing else. If they wipe out their enemies, they will inevitably wipe themselves out as well. They are a brutal Ouroboros doomed to an endless war cycle, but to an orc, why does it matter? If they fight and they win, they win. If they fight and they die, it was a good fight. Now that the Xenos armies are growing in strength and more are threatening the safety of the Imperium, they need to bring new methods in order to handle what they are currently facing. The Emperor is on the Golden Throne. Half the Space Marines are traitor, and they are beset from enemies within and without. So now the Lords on Terra must prepare for anything possible, and sometimes the impossible. For that, they take to the stars to explore and expand. They recruit assassins for priority eliminations. They train a galactic police force and a secret police to root out any and all
Galactic
haters.
police
The
force?
lesser known, yet most feared,
Agents of the Imperium.
I carry with me an inquisitorial seal. It is a small, unassuming object contained in a neat box of Pluvian obsidian. It is a modest thing, relatively plain, adorned with a single motif and a simple motto. Yet with this little object, I can sign the death warrant of an entire world and can sign a billion souls to oblivion. Where the Imperium may see its justice dealt out by the hands of its armies and the gauntlets of its Astartes, when one needs eyes, ears, or both cut out, it looks to the agents of the Imperium. In a meta sense, these agents are a homogenized version of multiple factions from the original video 5 years ago. They comprise multiple aspects of the wide and all-encompassing armies of humanity and serve different roles. Whether it be the law enforcers of the Adeptus Arbites, the void-faring explorers of rogue traders, the invisible hand of the Assassinorum, or the hospitality of the Emperor's Inquisition, each
She
has
looks
a part
dope.
to play in the God Emperor's domain. Rogue traders are a great example of a somewhat undiscussed part of the Imperium: its nobility. While you may see the General Imperium as a totalitarian hellscape, because it is, this is to those under the boot of the nobles that run it. Rogue traders are a special kind of explorer, and their existence is extremely important to the function of the Imperium. A rogue trader is often an extremely special individual and is given the monumentally sized warrant of trade, allowing them to be given almost complete and utter freedom. Their task
Interesting.
is to chart the uncharted, learn the unlearned, and do whatever they can as an explorer and conquistador for those back on Terra. This information is, strictly speaking, invaluable. Whether a sector can be settled and colonies built, or precious rare resources exist on a floating asteroid can be mined, or a long-lost Imperial world from the Age of Strife is recovered, it's all absolutely imperative. These rogue traders are faster than any other kind of Imperial armada, and therefore chart the direction of the entire society. Because of this, rogue traders are given a substantial amount of freedom. They have a ship and a crew of specialists, and can do things that would see any normal person shot. They can barter deals and even recruit Xenos races. They can explore areas strictly prohibited, and they can earn a vast amount of wealth and riches in doing so. This tends to make rogue traders a very long
Are they like
lineage,
the
and their heirs
pirates?
take up the mantle
Kind of
their
like
house.
space
By being
pirates?
explorers, they become fabulously wealthy, and some can become quite the assholes while doing so. But truly, much like a night pilot, a rogue trader is an exceptionally rich individual who can back it up. They are master swordsmen, explorers, merchants, settlers, diplomats, and everything in between. They chart a course, and they set the grounds, which means they will need someone to defend them, and the prime choice for that can be the Adeptus Arbites. Now, the Arbites are cops, Judge Dredd
Is this the
style cops, as
Arbites?
their inspiration
Arbites?
clearly shows. Each planet will have their own members of local law enforcement, and most of them will settle many of the issues there and then. But when something requires a far more in-depth peacekeeping force, the Adeptus Arbites are brought in. Think local police versus the FBI. Arbitrators in the Arbites tend to focus heavily on stopping crime before it can become too much of a threat. A criminal gang or heretical uprising can be subdued quickly and efficiently by utilizing them and dealing with soon-to-be criminals, as they put it. They will tap into communications, create spy networks, do interrogations and sabotage, anything that helps the good of the Imperium and the law they seek to preserve. The Code of the Arbites is
Borderline
laid out
corrupted.
entirely
It's
via
fine.
the Book of Judgment, a gigantic library of pages showing every single law from every single High Lord of Terra in the history of the Imperium. Because the Imperium is so vast, hundreds of laws are added every single day, and the library continues to grow with more and more laws and judgments. While Arbites themselves carry a small version called the Book of Law on their person, this does end up creating a system where the unjustly prosecuted will never escape their prisons. If an innocent is wrongly convicted, any form of legal counsel will need to go through the Book of Judgment to help get you out.
Book
Often
of
these prisoners
Judgment.
require hundreds of years of litigation, in which they will eventually expire before they can be deemed wrongly convicted. Innocence is irrelevant.
Oh.
You have been judged guilty of transgressing the Lex Imperialis. Do not compound your guilt by evading punishment, as there are greater crimes, so are there greater sentences. Of course, should something go out of the hands of the Adeptus
Ruthless!
Arbites, there is
This is
always the
ruthless!
silent hand of the Officio Assassinorum to take their place. Naturally, the Imperium has assassins, and these assassins are sent to dispatch important figures that would not normally be handled by simply sending waves and waves of guardsmen at it. The Assassinorum is headed by the Grand Master of the Assassinorum, who is a High Lord of Terra and perhaps the shadiest individual in the entire galaxy. At his disposal
Fly in
are
here.
multiple types of assassins that all specialize in various things. Their training is extreme and absurd. Aspirant children are often subjected to Hunger Games style combat with each other on the ride over to the temple. Then you get low gravity, high pressure, traps, horrendous physical and mental strain, and everything in between. Then their minds are wiped completely and the real fun begins. An Imperial Assassin is nothing to mess around with. They are some of the fastest moving and hardest hitting things the Imperium has at hand and can go toe to toe with Space Marines depending on which temple they are from. Some, like the Vindicares, are master snipers who lie in wait for weeks, days, or even months just to get the perfect headshot from 5 kilometers away and disappear. The Calidus Temple are masters of shape-shifting and take a drug that allows them to transmute their body into whatever they see fit. A confidant of a target may be killed and they will take their place before killing their target outright. Or they could shift into a member of a Chaos Warband with symbols and flesh and all that to earn the trust of a cult leader before slitting their throat. The
Oh my
Colluxus
gosh.
Assassin is a psychic blank, a soulless mutation, making them appear as uneasy to normal humans and downright disgusting to psychers. When a powerful psycher is causing issues, this is who you send. Their specialized helmet enhances their already latent powers and will allow them to all but
Helmet.
drain the souls from those they touch and their very body. It is an extreme weapon used when a direct form of pressure must be applied to an otherwise untouchable psyker. Now, if you need a direct pressure in a more literal way, the Eversor is for you. A drugged up comatose psychopath that is directly dropped on enemy lines and allowed to wreak havoc, killing anything and everything it sees in a blaze of movement and blood before it inevitably dies and causes a plasma explosion on its demise. There are other temples as well, the Vanis Temple acting as sort of like a cyber hacker, the Venom Temple specializing in poisons, but all in all, assassins move with their skin-tight body gloves with a speed unmatched and force unexpected.
Okay, they
One
sound
of the
dope
best
though.
assassin novels puts a Vindicare, Calidus, and Vanis to infiltrate a night world, kill the High Monarch of the Night, who is permanently stuck in his giant robot knight, install a new ruler in his stead, and make sure nobody knows the Imperium did it. Their missions are insanity, and their tasks impossible, and they do it anyway. Thus is the power the Assassinorum wields.
And they'll
We
do
do
it
not
anyway.
determine the guilty, we do not decide the punishment. We are merely the cold instrument of the Emperor's vengeance. There is no form of death unknown to us. There is no form of terror beyond our means. There is no enemy outside our reach. We are the blade that hovers over the throat of the traitor. We are the bullet that awaits the heretic's skull. We are the poison in the throat of the alien. However, despite the prowess of the traitors, the police, and the assassins, there is one that stands above all. As the Imperium settled into its post-Emperor world, they needed a force to root out corruption wherever it could be found. But they needed specialized individuals who could do so. Men and women who would serve as detective and executioner. This new secret police would have unlimited authority, and they would be known as the Inquisition. Inquisitors of the Inquisition are one of the most feared individuals in all of the galaxy for the common members of humanity. Trained in the most difficult of conditions.
So I guess I didn't realize that this was so extensive. I thought it was like only the Arbites, and that was like it for the Imperial Police. I didn't realize there was assassins. Like, I didn't realize it was so deep at all. That's crazy.
And mental hardening, they have long closed their minds to the compassions of those they deem guilty. Inquisitors are, for the most part, detectives, but they are detectives whose authority is unmatched and actions justified by the state itself. Similar to the KGB, the Gestapo, the Stasi, the OVRA, but unlike those organizations, the Inquisition has far more authority and is one of the only types of individuals who can commit exterminatus, the term used for the utter and total destruction of a planet that is no longer deemed usable by the Imperium. While it is a very exciting word and a commonly notable thing done in Warhammer, exterminatus is not actually used particularly often. It's a last resort entirely meant to stop the enemy from gaining a major foothold or spread even more corruption. Even with 1 million worlds, the wholesale slaughter of an entire planet is still a massive blow to the Imperium. Inquisitors range quite a bit, not just in how they operate, but also in their personalities. They are often main characters for a large amount of books, as detective noir is a
Guy with the
genre,
sunglasses.
and they can be the most stone-cold killer or a pragmatic and sympathetic individual depending on who they are. Radical Inquisitors may utilize methods unlike most of the Imperium, such as alien tech or even demon hosts, where Puritans stick closer to the methods of the religious state and shun any deviations.
Isn't that
They
heresy?
also specialize in various aspects, as the Inquisition has orders or ordos, such as Xenos for aliens, Malleus for demons, and Hereticus for, you guessed it. Truly, if you are a normal citizen of the Imperium, a person flashing an inquisitorial rosette in front of you may be one of the most terrifying moments of your entire life. It is the same as an FBI badge or a KGB member, except now you're in Warhammer. So, their authority and tools are
Terrifying.
infinite. Agents
Absolutely
of the Imperium
terrifying.
are vast and offer a ton of different concepts to the world of Warhammer. And they continue to expand as the Emperor's descent into the Golden Throne has lasting effects on humanity. As time progressed, a few people seeing the Emperor as a deity made their voices louder, and over a few thousand years, worship of the Emperor was not only considered expected, but state mandated. This church will be known as the Ecclesiarchy, and there were many who would look to the cardinal position and make desperate grabs at their power, leaving horrid effects on the populace. The Age of Apostasy was a time of reformation in the Imperium that saw its eventual change into an overtly religious empire. During this time, an all-female warrior
Ooh,
cult
she
to
cute
the
though.
Emperor
She
called
cute.
The Daughters of the Emperor were a bit more isolated from the
Freaking
wider
fly.
Imperium. However, as the ecclesiarchy began to take root, one Goj Van Dyer became the High Lord of the Administratum and noticed these warriors and felt they could be useful to him. Goj himself told these warriors that he was the voice of the Emperor himself and demanded they fire upon him to prove it. Having a little hidden force field that this warrior cult had never seen before, the bullet bounced off of him and showing him to be unharmed, truly blessed by the Emperor. This cult became known as the Brides of the Emperor and acted as his personal bodyguards and aides.
Never heard of this
However,
either.
Goj Van Dyer was a tyrant, and his horrendous reign spelled ruination for the wider Imperium, which made the Adeptus Custodes take notice. Despite an outright coup and revolt against him, the deadlock was getting steep as the Brides of the Emperor's fierce combat skills kept him safe. One
Brides?
custodian made contact with the leader of the brides and brought her into the throne room of the Emperor himself. Nobody knows what transpired in that room, save for Alicia Dominica, the custodian, and the Emperor himself. However, she left the room with her hair bleached pure white from the interaction, marched her battle brides directly to Van Dyer himself and said, "You have committed the ultimate heresy. Not only have you turned your back on the Emperor and stepped from his light, you have profaned his name and almost destroyed everything he has striven to build. You have perverted and twisted the path he has laid for mankind to tread. As your decrees have stated, there can be no mercy for such a crime, no pity for such a criminal. I renounce your lordship. You walk in the darkness and cannot be allowed to live. Your sentence has been long overdue, and it is now time for you to die." Despite
Okay,
not
girl.
having any time to die, Doge Van Dyer found some time to do so. With his head lopped clean from his body, the brides of the Emperor were no more, and the ecclesiarchy signed a document to stop Van Dyer's reign from happening again. They would no longer be allowed to have men under arms.
Sister Sororitas?
Men.
Or Adeptus Sororitas? I got one!
The Adeptus Sororitas.
Okay, so I guess I'm a little confused. This fly is gonna drive me absolutely insane. So when was the Emperor Brides converted into Adeptus Sororitas? Is that like a 30k into 40k change? Because I've never heard of the Emperor's Brides ever, but I am familiar with the Adeptus Sororitas.
More commonly known as the Sisters of Battle, the nuns with guns, the fighting force of the church. Despite being the main militant faction, the Sisters of Battle, their organization actually is far more diverse than this and have many more nun-based roles for their members. They are organized by various orders with various specialties in mind, such as the non-militant orders like the Hospitaller, Dialogus, and Familius, including things like helping with surgical equipment and various other medical stuff, Duolingo, and a poli-sci degree. These orders are further separated into smaller orders in an almost Space Marine chapter sense, but tend to have more flexibility due to the nature of their work. And in addition to that, there is flexibility between the orders. It is not uncommon for a member of one of the more battle-hardened orders to switch to a more passive one once they've sustained battlefield injuries or are a bit closer to retirement. As mentioned before, the Sisters of Battle are a part of their own separate organization, the Order's Militant, and feature the highest number of any given sister. They are the official fighting force of the ecclesiarchy, and they specialize in wars of faith. Unlike the deployment of Astartes and Guardsmen, the Sisters...
Okay, so do they have... Are they more like Cadians levels? Like they're humans with upgraded gear? Because as far as they're not actual space marines, right? So are they like in the same human category as like the Imperial Police and like the assassins and all that? Or do they have like special war gear closer to space marines?
Sisters of Battle are often deployed with members of the Inquisitorial Ordo Hereticus due to the holy war nature of their battles. The Sisters of Battle are suited up with their own form of specialized power armor that gives them almost like a Joan of Arc vibe to the battlefield. Though lacking the more extreme modifications of a Space Marine's power armor, mainly to the fact that Sisters are, for the most part, regular humans, the power armor of a Sister of Battle almost matches the defensive power of an Astartes, but with added flexibility and versatility in exchange for strength. Some of the patterns of armor do allow for the enhancing of genetics, but this is far from the norm. This, combined with an arsenal of tanks and vehicles that have literal church organ rocket launchers on them, really brings across the holy war vibe in a gothic manner. Accompanying a Sister of Battle in the fields of war is the holy trinity of weaponry: the bolter, the flamer, and the melta. With such a simple loadout, the Sisters of Battle are able to bring down the glorious flames of the Emperor himself, and his holy light shines on them in other ways during a conflict. Hell, even their jump packs evoke angelic imagery as opposed to the more clunky jetpacks, ones that Space Marines have. In times of great turmoil or impossibility, a living saint of the sororitas itself might appear on the battlefield surrounded by a litany of doves and cherubs, an almost comical scene of holy glory followed by literal hellfire. The Sisters are a fascinating organization because they take what is normally seen as a benevolent force and turn it on its head to be a horrifying method of war. Because the Sisters are so zealous, they are nigh impossible to persuade and almost never fall to chaos. In fact, any deviation from the Imperial faith may see you killed outright as you are deemed a heretic, and sometimes Sisters have even less patience than the Inquisition does. To the Adeptus Sororitas, no punishment is too extreme for blasphemy and heretical behavior. Whether it's lobotomizing traitors to use as shock troops or attaching them physically to agonizing pain engines so they can die for the Emperor, anything goes. The most fascinating part of the Sisters, however, is their faith. We discussed how orcs often make things happen through belief because of their sheer number of them. The Sisters create miracles where they walk. They are not many psychers like orcs, but they are excessively devout and make up for that. Bullets barely miss targets they absolutely should hit. Guns jam, tanks malfunction, enemies slip and fall. The scene from Pulp Fiction is an accurate portrayal of what happens when the Sisters fight.
I'd knock that shit off if I was you.
Die, you motherfucker!
One of the most prominent figures is the Triumph of St. Catherine, a literal open casket with the saint of a Sister's order held aloft by lobotomized servant cherubs and protected by bodyguards of the faithful.
Wait, she's
the
dead?
devotion to the Emperor swells so strong that acts of faith are made manifest, and sometimes angels themselves. When the Sisters go to war, they have thundering organs and litanies screeching out into the battlefield, hymns and songs. They rabble off prayers on their lips and burn holy fire across the area. They spray holy water down from horns atop their vehicles. It is a genuine holy war, a procession of death. Saint Celestine is an undying deity, arriving precisely where she is needed and returning to the fold after each death. When she dies, she sees a crying young girl atop a mountain of bones, her bones, after every one of her deaths. She climbs this mountain every time to help comfort this crying child and is rebirthed upon the battlefield. And one day, her deaths will create a mountain so large that even she will not be able to traverse it. Is she a demon of the God Emperor? Perhaps, but she'll be shot for saying so. She is genuinely and literally faith made manifest. Some Sisters may make a mistake, however, and find themselves questioning their faith, disobeying a command, and even leaving their order. These Sisters are sent for reconditioning and are known as the Sisters Repentia. They generally face the front of the line head on and seek retribution and forgiveness from the Emperor himself.
Okay, so she's holding a chainsword, but I thought only Space Marines could wield chainswords and like the hammers and power swords, right? No? Yeah? Maybe?
Though their actions were heretical, repentia on the fields of battle is an indication of an individual wanting to become forgiven. They run aloft with torture devices attached to their bodies and a chain sword the size of their body.
Are these like the Hellion Sisters?
To determine if this is how they die or if the Emperor will forgive them. Even the most famous champion of the Sisters, that Saint Celestine, was a repentia. Even she questioned her faith. And if she can do it, so can you. Just don't run away again. They don't really do third chances. The Sisters of Battle are martyrdom-enthused zealots that create miracles in their tread. Their devotion is boundless and also a direct source of their power. A whole army of power-armored soldiers shooting, burning, and melting all in their path is bad enough. but it enters a whole different level when God is on your side. By Bolter, Shell, Flamer, Burst, and Melta Blast, the mutant, the heretic, and the traitor alike are cleansed of their sin of existence. So has it been for 5 millennia, so shall it be until the end of time. The Imperium devolving into wars of faith is to push its agenda further. Where the xenophobic nature of humanity was once strong, it has now been magnified, and there are plenty of aliens in this galaxy. 6,000 years prior to the current events of 40K, a planet was found by an AdMech exploration vessel. The life forms on the planet were seen using tools, but they were still very primitive, so the planet was marked for destruction to pave the way for the Imperial War Machine. However, this was thrown off because of an extreme warp storm and that whole Doge Van Dyer thing. Flash forward to modern day, and an unknown but highly advanced vessel was shot down near an Imperial mining world, and the bodies on this vessel matched those life forms found on that primitive world. The native creatures on that planet were able to evolve rapidly due to them being unobstructed, and their highly advanced gear posed a new threat to the Imperium. Advancing over these years with a remarkable speed, these are the new upstarts in the galaxy, looking to make a name for themselves, all in the name of the greater good. These are
the Tau! I can't wait to actually dive into this. So we're gonna stop here and conclude our part 2, and then we will finish the rest of this for part 3 next stream. So thank you guys for watching with me!